What's going on, full-time family? We've got some breaking news. Dana White has said the UFC is done with Cris Cyborg. We are out of the Cyborg business. She can go to Bellator for the easy fight she wants. More words from Dana White that is sure to piss off Cyborg Nation, and I understand that, man. I got love for Cyborg Nation. I definitely got love for the coach. I got love for Dennis Espinoza. All of Cyborg Nation that is loyal to Cyborg. I completely understand it. Your loyalty, the bias, of course, it's easy to believe Cyborg is the victim in this situation. 100%. I understand where you're coming from, but I have to admit that's not my stance on this situation. Even after all has been said and done, I believe even more so now that Dana White is just doing what Dana White does as far as business, promoting, marketing, negotiating. I mean, whenever you go into contract negotiations, you need leverage in order to get the money you want, you feel like you deserve. A lot of times fighters, the UFC will renegotiate with fighters when they have 2 fights left on their contract because it determines a lot the path they want to take fighters on. If a fighter re-signs with the UFC for 6 fights, then they might be more willing to give them big fights because they know they're going to be UFC fighters and they'll be able to build the fighter's stock up and they will still be part of the UFC brand. They don't want a guy that's only got 2 fights left on his contract. They're not going to give him a McGregor fight so he can win and then go negotiate with Bellator or PFL or ONE. So the UFC tries to negotiate with fighters usually when they have 2 to 1 fights left on their contract. Now, as a fighter, you have that option to either renegotiate with the UFC at that point or try and fight out your contract and raise your stock and test free agency. So Cyborg, her contract is up because she chose to fight Amanda Nunes and fight Felicia Spencer without renegotiating with the UFC. She was not happy with their terms or they were not happy with her terms. And so one of the ways you can try and get leverage is by winning, beating Amanda Nunes, beating Felicia Spencer, being the UFC champion. Because that's how you get leverage. If Cris Cyborg beat Amanda Nunes, she would have a lot more leverage right now as the best female fighter on the planet. Now, vice versa, when you bet on yourself and you lose, which Cris Cyborg did against Amanda Nunes, and it wasn't embarrassing because anything can happen, but just the fact that people can say that Cris Cyborg got knocked out quicker than Ronda Rousey, that people didn't expect that. That was a bad loss for Cris Cyborg. So you lose leverage when that happens. Now we go into the Felicia Spencer fight. Everyone expects Cyborg to dominate this girl. She's only got 7 wins on her record. She's not a great striker. She's not a great wrestler. All she's got is jiu-jitsu. Everyone expected Cyborg to dominate this girl, finish her. This girl came in and cut Cyborg with a nasty... She gave Cyborg a nasty gash on her head. Cyborg needed crazy stitches in that. There's pictures coming out of the cut she's opening up. You see in all of her interviews, she's got on scarves over her head, hats over her head. That's how bad the cut still is. That she had, there's a scar there from the healing. It hasn't fully healed up clearly. And so with that being said, not only was there that cut in the first minute, Felicia Spencer landed combinations throughout the fight. She landed 1, 2. She got her ass beat throughout the 3 rounds, but she was supposed to. She was actually supposed to get finished, a lot of people expected, and that didn't happen. So Felicia Spencer was tough, and she even landed some shots against the greatest female fighter on the planet. So that doesn't really raise your stock if you're Cyborg. You go in there and you beat a girl you were supposed to beat, and you didn't even do it in a finish, in the fashion people expected. So that doesn't help your cause in negotiations. So now here we are in negotiations. Take the emotions out of it. Cris Cyborg gambled on herself and lost, which means you're not going to get the money you want. People think that I literally just heard before I made this video, somebody thought that Dana White was afraid Amanda Nunes would lose the rematch. That is one of the most asinine, ridiculous, ludicrous, illogical things I've ever heard in my life. People actually believe Nunes is scared of Cyborg in the rematch. They think the UFC is scared for Nunes. And they can't fathom the thought that Cris Cyborg might not want to lose the rematch. When even non-biased fans will tell you the Cyborg we saw versus Felicia Spencer will not beat Amanda Nunes. Cyborg needs to be improving, and what we've seen versus Felicia Spencer, that's not going to work, because if you can't finish Felicia Spencer, you're probably not going to finish Amanda Nunes. For one, she's way more skilled, and for two, if Amanda Nunes lands the shots Felicia Spencer was landing, she could knock Cyborg out. We've already seen it. So Cyborg's not going to be able to beat Nunes. So people are literally more willing to believe Nunes, who knocked Cyborg out and then knocked Holly Holm out, looking better than ever, is scared of Cyborg, who is looking not better than ever, who got knocked out and then went to a decision with Felicia Spencer, who's only 7-0. Cyborg's on the decline. Amanda Nunes is the GOAT, and people think Nunes is the one that's scared? I mean, it's just illogical. People are getting emotional because Cyborg said, "Oh, my boss said I looked like a man 5 years ago." And then the commentator said I had a dick 3 years ago on his podcast with another comedian. They made a joke about me. They made a joke about me on a podcast. I mean, I think the commentating was biased, so I'm getting bullied. And everyone is just so quick to jump on this bully train. They don't even care about the facts or the business or the negotiations or the logic. It's all emotion. And it is what it is. I'm not going to change my stance, because one other thing I got to touch on, the video was edited weird as fuck. Did you guys not watch that video Cyborg dropped where she said she approached Dana White and she cut it off and they put captions on it? And she said Dana White said it's not the truth, and that's not even what he said. If you read his lips, that's not what he said. I mean, you can go back and watch it in slow motion. It's not what he said. And why did they cut the video off right there? Why'd they cut the video off that second and then put those misleading captions? So all the logic tells you that Cyborg's not getting the money she wants from the UFC negotiations. And listen to this. Here's some more food for thought before I get out of here and get back to work. In the UFC, you can make way more money than any other promotion in the world if you're the champion, because then you get pay-per-view points. Cris Cyborg would make way more money in the UFC if she believed she could beat Amanda Nunes, because she would win her belt back, and then she would get pay-per-view points, and she could get back on Jon Jones pay-per-views and get those pay-per-view percentage points. But if you lose to Amanda Nunes, you do not get your belt back, and you do not get pay-per-view points. And so you don't get the big money. So if you believe you can win, you can re-sign with the UFC, win your belt back, and get your pay-per-view points and the big money. But if you're not confident that you can win, it might be wiser to sign with Bellator, where there are easier fights. Dana White is not lying in saying Bellator has easier fights than the UFC. Nobody on Bellator's roster would last 3 rounds with Amanda Nunes. Holly Holm would probably beat Bellator's featherweight champion. Now, that's not to say Cris Cyborg's not going to go over there and have a competitive fight, because we just seen she had a competitive, I mean, it wasn't competitive because she won it unanimously, but Felicia Spencer did a lot better than people expected. So if Cyborg goes to Bellator and fights Julia Budd, I'm sure Julia Budd's going to land some shots. I mean, it's really a lose-lose. If Julia Budd looks competitive against Cyborg, it's because Cyborg's on the decline, and if Cyborg smokes her, it's because it's easier competition. So the only reason to go over there is just to get winnable fights, and so you don't have to kind of save your legacy. Cyborg re-signing somewhere else right now it's up in the air. Some people really believe Nunes is scared of Cyborg, even though she already knocked her out in record time. And so right now it's up in the air. Oh, is Cyborg still the GOAT, or is Nunes the GOAT? And really it's not. It's really, I mean, the truth is it's not. But if Amanda Nunes beat Cyborg twice, it would really put a stamp on it. There would be nowhere to go. You wouldn't be the champion. You would just be a journeywoman in the UFC, not getting pay-per-view points. So there's a lot more glory in Bellator, where there's a lot less risk as well. So that's my view on this. Cyborg's officially a free agent. I'm sure she'll be signing with Bellator. I mean, in the coming weeks. I don't know if there's a certain amount of time that they have to wait, but Dana White has said she's free to sign. He even mentioned Bellator. He seems pretty irritated, and you've got to imagine, I mean, editing these videos and claiming bullying and harassment, you got to imagine he's pretty willing to wash his hands with Cyborg at this point. I mean, negotiations go south and you start talking about harassment from 5 years ago. That's pretty fucked up, man. I think, I mean, it's not like Dana White came out in a press conference even this year, even recently, and said Cyborg anything negative about Cyborg's appearance. He hasn't said anything about her looking like a man, anything about her, nothing. And so it's just really weird how we're bringing this up from 5 years ago, and please explain the video editing. I was debating my boy Stamina MC. You guys all know Stamina MC, part of the Full-Time family. He was debating me on this topic, and he hadn't even watched the video. So before you guys get all emotional and just take Cris Cyborg's side, the victim side, make sure you at least look at the evidence, watch the video, just think for yourself. That's all I'm asking, man. With that being said, it is what it is. Let the Full-Time family know what you think in the comments. I'm getting back to work. I'm out.